Hey y'all, section 2. Are y'all ready? Hopefully you got a chance to read section 1 on awareness and answer the questions at the end of the section, and maybe go over them with someone in your group that you're with, or just look at them and dwell on them if you're reading it on your own. One of the quotes I want to read that was at the end of that first section, it says this, and this is from Eckhart Tolle from his book, A New Earth. I think I'm saying his name correctly. The quote is, "There are two ways of being unhappy. One is not getting what you want, and getting what you want is the other." So we get stuck in this cycle of not getting what we want, and that makes us unhappy, and then believing that something that we want and we get it, that's going to make us happy, and inevitably it does not. So that was a powerful, incredible quote that I really liked from his book. So into mindfulness, and just a reminder that mindfulness is that day-to-day, in the moment, throughout your day, where, as my counselor said, just catch yourself when you're starting to feel a feeling. When you're in a conversation or you're driving down the road, that's a hot one for me. When you start catching that self-dialogue, just get out of control, just stop and catch yourself and say, that thing is happening, or I'm doing that thing. You don't have to know where it came from. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to get upset about it. You just start noticing it happening. And that's a great exercise. My counselor told me, he said, all I want you to do is when you start feeling a feeling, notice when it happens. And I didn't really at that time understand what was happening by that, what the explanation meant, but I began to do it, and I noticed that I could minimize the length of time that I would get caught in those negative feelings. And I noticed I could do it faster, and I wasn't doing it as often. I was being able to separate myself from getting caught up in situations that I didn't want to be in, or situations that would draw out the worst of me, or a negative version of me. Or I would walk away from a situation feeling bad, and I would dwell on it. I was notorious for that. So mindfulness is like the trap that catches those feelings and then holds them there. And you can say to yourself, do I want to give into that and get wrapped up in that, or do I want to separate from it? Obviously, separating from it is generally the best way to go. Let me get back on my notes here. So typically, we are allocating mental and emotional resources to remind ourselves to be mindful, but over time, it becomes natural and built into the essence of who we are, and it just becomes a habit, and you don't have to be so focused on it. It just becomes a part of who we are. And this keeps us from getting caught up in something that would normally get us out of our calm zone, our settled self. It could be a conversation, an incident, even the traffic or the weather. Those were two big ones for me, and several books call the traffic and weather low-hanging fruit, because there's essentially nothing you can do about it. It's 100% out of your control. But I see so many people, including myself, would get so wrapped up in the fact that we can't control traffic, and we let that dictate to us our well-being in that moment. Mindfulness has a way of keeping us at a safe distance from instances and situations, and it allows us to keep all parts of our minds functioning to make the best decisions based on the long-term values and principles that we put into place from our awareness. So you can see that they work together. They're like teammates. Mindfulness can be and should be, and you want it to be with you at all moments. If you find yourself in the middle of a conversation with a family member, a coworker, a friend, and all of a sudden you begin to get wrapped up and start feeling a feeling, mindfulness will allow you to catch yourself in that moment and go, wait a minute, I am being mindful that I'm in this situation and I feel myself going down this pattern, this pathway of leading to something I don't want to go to. Either I'm going to react in it right now in the moment of when it's happening, or I'm going to avoid the confrontation and I'm going to dwell on it later negatively and let it roll around in my mind and create all these scenarios that generally are not real. They're imaginary. Our imaginations are strong. Mindfulness allows you the opportunity to catch yourself and not get caught up and wrapped up in all of a sudden you're out of control and anger or frustration or sadness or depression is kicking up in you. And this is just something that you've done for a long time. And so your mind's built this pattern and it just thinks that's what you want to do because that's what you've always done. The great thing is that you can change that pattern. And mindfulness is incredibly important to starting the process of that. You can catch yourself in the middle of that conversation, in the middle of that feeling in traffic or dwelling on the fact that it's raining and you want it to be sunshine and you go, wait, I don't have to do this. I don't have to get caught up in this. I can separate. I can choose. I have a choice whether or not I want to give this feeling or these thoughts capital or if I want to walk away from it, metaphorically speaking. An example of this is found in conversations that we know there's just certain people that can bring out the worst in us. And so what mindfulness will do is when you're walking into one of those situations at work or at home or wherever it may be, you can be prepping yourself a little bit. Mindfulness will get you to a place where you're like, you know what? I know I'm about to walk into work or I'm about to walk into home or I'm about to go visit the in-laws, whatever your situation is. Mindfulness will give you an opportunity to do some preventive maintenance. You can say, okay, I know this person generally is going to talk like this or say these things that I don't agree with or whatever. Mindfulness can prep you to where you don't have to get sucked in to the situation. You can say, no, I'm opting out. You can be aware that the moment is happening, and mindfulness will give you the tool you need to not have to engage in that. Catching yourself in this middle of a conversation. Maybe you don't have time to prep. You just find yourself in a situation where it's like, oh, what I learned was and noticed was that in the middle of a conversation or a middle of a situation, that mindfulness mode would kick in and I would go, wait a minute. I'm allowing this circumstance, this situation to have some control over me and how I feel. I don't have to do that. I can separate from that. I can walk away. I can mentally say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. And that is something I never did before. I had no idea. I wasn't even aware that this notion of I can choose whether or not I want to engage in this. Or I can take a different path. I can choose to respond differently in a more controlled, logical way versus allowing my emotional self, my ego mind to take over and dictate to me how I respond and then how I feel for minutes, hours, days later. I don't have to do that. And mindfulness is key in giving you that tool of control over yourself. So lastly, in section 2, there's some questions there I would love for you to fill out. If you have different ideas and different things that came to mind as you went through the chapter, there's a place there for notes. Get in there and write that stuff down because that's what your spirit self, the Holy Spirit, may be speaking to you. Write that stuff down. It's very important. So I hope you enjoyed mindfulness. I know I did, and we'll see you in chapter 3.